Hey guys, welcome back to another cooking video. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you a ton of super simple chicken recipes. These are all super easy to make, and the best part is you only need a few ingredients to make them. Some are healthy, some not so healthy, but they're all delicious, and I'm sure you'll be able to find at least one in here that you will enjoy. I have 12 recipes to share with you today, so let's just head on over to the kitchen and let's get started. So to start off, I'll be making this super simple chicken dinner, and that is cheesy pesto chicken. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some cream cheese to a bowl. I'm adding 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. Next, I'm adding 1/3 cup of pesto. If you have time to make your own, you can certainly do that. It will taste even better. I'm going to mix this all together and then I'm going to set it aside. Then I'm going to add 4 boneless skinless chicken breasts to a 7 by 11 inch baking dish that I've lightly sprayed with some cooking spray. I'm going to season them with some salt and pepper on both sides, and then I'm going to spread the pesto mixture on top. Now I'm going to sprinkle some mozzarella cheese on top. I'm going to bake this in the oven uncovered at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. You want your meat thermometer to reach at least an internal temperature of 165 degrees. You also don't want to overcook it, so make sure to keep an eye on it. Here it is out of the oven. I did put it under the broiler for about a minute or so, just to get that golden brown color. I just served this with some garlic couscous and added some fresh basil and diced tomatoes on top of my chicken. I thought this was really good. It definitely has a lot of flavor. I love that it's minimal ingredients and super simple to make. If you like pesto, then I'm sure you would enjoy this one. For this next super simple chicken dinner, I am making some Fiesta Hasselback chicken. So I have 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts here, and I'm going to start off by cutting some grooves into the chicken, just like this. This is what it should look like, but make sure that you do not cut all the way through. So now I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to grab a bowl, and in that bowl, I'm going to add 1 can of Rotel tomatoes, and you want to make sure to drain it. You don't want all that extra liquid. Now I'm going to add in some cheese. I'm using this Tex-Mex blend, but you can use whatever kind of Mexican cheese that you like. Then I'm going to quickly mix this together, and then I'm going to spoon some of that mixture into the grooves of the chicken. And I also did season my chicken with some salt and pepper. Once all of the grooves were filled, I went ahead and sprinkled some garlic powder on top for some extra flavor. And then I popped this in the oven at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. Make sure to keep an eye on it. My chicken was done after 30 minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some more cheese on top. This is going to go back in the oven for another 2 to 3 minutes until my cheese is completely melted. This is what it looks like out of the oven. It looks amazing. We had this with some Spanish rice and some sweet corn, and it was delicious. The chicken was tender and juicy and very tasty. Here is another super simple chicken dinner. I am making some lemon baked chicken. This one is one of my favorites. It's healthy, extremely easy to make, and so good. To start off, I've placed 4 chicken breasts in a large Ziploc bag, and I did pound my chicken a little bit so that they cook more evenly, and this also helps to tenderize it. So in the bag here, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of this lemon pepper seasonings. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of basil, 1 teaspoon of oregano, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then I'm going to add some olive oil. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, followed by 1/2 cup of lemon juice. I'm using freshly squeezed, and I used 2 lemons and a half. Now I'm just going to seal the bag, making sure to squeeze all the air out. Going to give it a good shake, and then I'm going to let this marinate in the fridge for 2 hours. You can let this marinate anywhere between 30 minutes up to 2 hours. After 2 hours, I'm going to grab my chicken from the fridge and place it in a 9x13 pan. You will notice that the chicken has changed color. It's more of a white color, and that's completely normal. This is caused by the acid in the lemon juice. Now I'm going to add some lemon slices on top, and then I'm going to bake this in my preheated oven at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. Once again, make sure you check up on it with a meat thermometer. You don't want to overcook it, and it's safe to eat when it reaches a minimal temperature of 165 degrees. Here is my plate. My chicken was done after 30 minutes. I went ahead and served this with some roasted potatoes and a salad, and it was just fantastic. If you like food cooked with lemon, if you like lemon flavor, then you will love this. It's so good, so tender. It's definitely a favorite of mine. If you decide to try this, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. I would love to know if you liked it as much as I did. This one is probably the easiest out of all the recipes I'll be sharing in this video today, and it was really delicious. So I have 4 chicken breasts here, and I did pound them with a rolling pin before adding them in here just to tenderize them a little bit. And now I'm going to go ahead and season them on both sides with some salt and pepper. I'm also going to be adding some garlic powder and some paprika. I have no measurements for this, so just measure with your heart. Then I'm just going to grab some hummus and generously spread that all over my chicken. I'm now going to bake this in the oven at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. Make sure that your oven is preheated. And I'm going to cook this until my meat thermometer reaches at least 165 degrees. Keep an eye on it because you don't want to overcook it. You want this chicken to be moist and tender. So this is what it looks like. For me, it took about 35 minutes. Again, it all depends on your oven and on the thickness of your chicken. You can put it under the broiler if you want for about a minute or so to crisp it up a little bit more, but I decided not to do that. I just didn't think it was necessary. So we just had this with some French fries this night. It was a very quick and easy dinner, not many ingredients as you saw, and we really enjoyed this one. This next super simple dinner is crispy cornflake ranch chicken. For this one, you're going to need 2 bowls. In the first bowl, I'm adding 2/3 of a cup of ranch salad dressing. Then in the second bowl, I'm adding some crushed cornflakes. I started with 2 cups, but my chicken breasts were pretty big, so I did end up having to make a second batch later on. To my cornflakes, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of Italian seasonings and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Going to stir this up real quick, and then I'm going to grab my chicken. I have 4 pretty large boneless skinless chicken breasts here, and I did flatten them out with a rolling pin since they are quite large, and I wanted to make sure that they cook more evenly. Or if you want, you can also cut your chicken in half. So first off, I'm going to dip each chicken breast into the ranch dressing, and then I'm going to coat them with the cornflake mixture, and you want to pat it well to make sure that your chicken is nicely coated. The one thing I will do differently next time is sprinkle the seasoning on top of the chicken instead of mixing it with the cornflakes. It just doesn't mix well together, and I did notice that some parts of the chicken would have more seasonings than others. So once you've got all of your chicken nicely coated, you're going to transfer them onto a greased pan. I normally use parchment paper, but I was completely out. I've already preheated my oven to 400 degrees, and now I'm going to bake this for 30 to 40 minutes. Here is my plate. The chicken was very crispy, which I love. I just served this with some cheesy ranch roasted potatoes and some green beans. It was really good. We really enjoyed it. Now we're making apple Gouda chicken. For this one, you're going to need some apples. I'm using Honeycrisp apples, but you can certainly use your favorite kind. And then of course, you're also going to need some Gouda cheese. So to start off, I'm going to slice up my apples, and then I'm also going to slice up my cheese. This is the thickness of my apples. They were a little bit crunchy when I took them out of the oven. Not a whole lot, but if you don't like that, then you might want a thinner slice. And here is also the thickness for the cheese, just to give you an idea. I'm also going to be cutting these into smaller pieces to fit inside the chicken, as you will see later in the video. Here I have 2 chicken breasts, and you want to make sure that they are equal in size as much as possible. I'm only making 2 because my kids won't eat this, so it's just Daniel and I. Now I'm just going to grab a sharp knife and I'm going to cut some slits in the chicken, just like this, making sure that I don't cut all the way through. This here is what it should look like once you're all done. Now I'm going to season my chicken with some salt and pepper. And I'm also going to add onion powder and garlic powder. I don't have any measurements for this, so just measure to your heart's desire. Then I'm simply going to grab my cheese and insert them inside the grooves of the chicken, just like so. And I'm also cutting them into smaller pieces so that they fit properly. Once you're done with your cheese, you're just going to go ahead and do the same thing with the apple slices. So this is what it looks like once you're all done. Now I'm going to transfer this onto a sheet pan that I've lined with parchment paper, and I'm going to cook this into a preheated oven at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. So I took it out of the oven after 30 minutes and my chicken was done. Now I'm going to kick it up a notch and add some more cheese on top. I'm doing a mixture of shredded Gouda and mozzarella cheese. Going to pop this back in the oven for another 2 to 3 minutes until the cheese is completely melted. Here is my plate. I just had this with some greens that I drizzled with some raspberry vinaigrette, and this was really good. This really surprised me a lot. I've never had chicken with apples before. I was so pleasantly surprised. Daniel also loved it, and we will definitely be making this again. Up next, I'll be making this super simple, no peeking chicken and rice. To get started, I'm going to add 2 cups of minute rice to a bowl, and then I'm going to add 1 can of cream of celery, as well as 1 can of cream of chicken. I'm now going to add 1 cup of water, and I'm going to give this a good mix. It should look something like this. Now I'm going to grab this and I'm going to transfer this into a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, and I'm going to spread it around. Next, I'm going to add my chicken. I have 4 chicken breasts here that I've seasoned with some pepper as well as some garlic powder, and I made sure to season them on both sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and add these over my rice. Now, before I add this into the oven, I'm also going to sprinkle some onion soup mix on top. If you don't like the taste of it, you can always use breadcrumbs instead. That works fine too. And here I decided to try something new and add some of these crunchy onion toppers on top. I love the taste of onions, so I thought this would give it a little something extra. Now I'm going to cover this very tightly with some aluminum foil. You want to make sure that it's nice and tight all around it. This is very, very important. I'm going to place this in my preheated oven at 350 degrees, and I'm going to cook this for about an hour and a half. The most important part of this recipe is that you do not peek at your chicken. Do not remove the foil at any point during the cooking process, or you will end up with dry rice, and you definitely don't want that. So here it is out of the oven. Of course, because this was covered, my crunchy onions are no longer crunchy, but it still tasted amazing. My chicken was done after the 1 hour and 30 minute mark. The rice is perfectly cooked. I just served this with a Caesar salad and it was delicious. My family loved it, and I'm sure you would love it too. This next one is a family favorite. It's a recipe that my mom used to make when I was a kid, and that is a lazy chicken. So for this one, I just grabbed the bowl, and in that bowl, I'm adding half a cup of brown sugar, followed by half a cup of ketchup. Next, I'm adding half a cup of vinegar, half a cup of water, and a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. Going to mix this real quick. Then I'm going to grab my sauce and pour just a little bit on the bottom of my casserole dish. I'm just going to quickly spread that around, and then I'm going to add in 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Now I'm going to grab 1 packet of onion soup mix, and I'm just going to spread it all over my chicken. Now I'm just going to let this sit for a couple of minutes just so the chicken can absorb some of that onion soup flavor, and then I'm going to pour the rest of my sauce on top. Now I'm going to cover it and cook this in a preheated oven at 325 degrees for 1 hour and 30 minutes to 1 hour and 45 minutes. This is what it looks like after about an hour and 40 minutes. You can leave it as is if you want. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I prefer a thicker sauce. So to thicken it up, it's super simple. I'm just going to make a quick slurry, which is equal parts cornstarch to equal parts cold water. Here I have 2 tablespoons of cold water, and I'm going to stir in 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And you want to mix this together till it becomes smooth. This here is what it should look like. Now back to the stove, I've transferred my sauce into a saucepan, and now I'm going to whisk in my slurry, and I'm going to let this cook until it thickens up. So as you can see, it's gotten pretty thick. If you don't want it as thick, you could do 1 tablespoon of water and cornstarch instead of 2. So I always like to serve this with some rice and add a little bit of the sauce on top. I also added some extra sauce on top of the chicken and served this with some green beans. Like I said, this is one of our family favorites. It's so simple to make. The chicken comes out really tender and it tastes really, really good. This next super simple chicken dinner is Caesar chicken. To get started, I'm placing 3 pretty large chicken breasts in a baking dish, and I'm going to season them with salt and pepper on both sides. Now, if your chicken is smaller, you can do 4 breasts instead of 3. I've also pounded them in a Ziploc bag with a rolling pin beforehand to flatten them out so that they cook more evenly. Now I'm simply going to sprinkle some shredded Parmesan cheese over my chicken, and again, you want to do this on both sides. Then I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to grab a bowl, and in that bowl I'm adding 1 cup of Caesar salad dressing, and I'm going to mix that with a 1/2 cup of sour cream. Going to mix this well, and then I'm going to head on over to my casserole dish, and I'm going to spread this all over my chicken. Now I'm just going to add some more Parmesan cheese on top. Add as much as you like. Then I'm going to pop this in my preheated oven at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. And as always, keep an eye on it. You don't want to overcook it. This is what it looks like out of the oven. I did put it under the broiler for about a minute or so just to get that nice golden color. I just served this with some Caesar salad, and this was so good. Lots of yummy flavors, and I really like how quick and easy this was to make. Next up, I'll be making some salsa chicken. So I'm going to start off by spreading 1/2 cup of salsa to the bottom of a 7x11 baking dish, and then I'm going to add 4 chicken breasts right on top. You can also make this in the crock pot if you want. You can change up the seasonings and use fajita seasonings instead of taco. You can also add some frozen vegetables in here if you want. It's just very versatile, and I really like it. Now I'm just going to sprinkle 1 packet of taco seasonings all over the top of my chicken, and then I'm going to spread another cup of salsa on top. I'm now going to pop this in a preheated oven at 400 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes until my chicken reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees. Make sure to keep an eye on it. You don't want to overcook it. After 35 minutes, my chicken was done. So now I'm going to sprinkle some cheddar cheese on top, and then I'm going to put it back in the oven for another 2 to 3 minutes, just long enough for the cheese to melt. I served this with rice and added some of the sauce on top. For the chicken, I just added sour cream and green onions on top, but you can add whichever toppings you prefer. This has a ton of flavor. It's very delicious, and I hope you will like it too. Next up, we have a sheet pan dinner. I am making honey mustard chicken. The first thing you want to do is prep your vegetables. I've already done this off camera to save up on time. Here I have about 1.5 cups of broccoli, 2 carrots cut into about 1-inch pieces, 1 sliced zucchini, 2 chopped up red bell peppers, and about 2.5 cups of diced potatoes. And of course, you can use whatever type of vegetables that you prefer. Now for the sauce, I'm going to grab a bowl, and I'm going to add 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, followed by 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard. I'm also adding 1/4 cup of honey and 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I'm just going to quickly stir that up. Now I'm slowly whisking in 1/3 cup of olive oil, and then I'm just going to stir this until it is well combined. Going to set this aside, going to grab another bowl and get started on my seasoning blend. For the seasonings, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of oregano, 3/4 teaspoon of thyme, 1/4 teaspoon of basil, 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then finally a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix this all together and I'm going to set it aside. Then I'm going to grab my chicken. I have 4 chicken breasts here and I'm going to brush them generously with some of the sauce that I made earlier, and I'm going to make sure to coat these on both sides. You also want to reserve some of the sauce for later, and I actually completely forgot to do that, so I ended up having to make a second batch. Once that's done, I'm going to grab my potatoes and add in my carrots, and then I'm also going to add about half of the seasonings. I'm then going to add some olive oil, about 2 tablespoons, and then I'm going to give this a good toss. You want to make sure that everything is well coated with the oil and the spices. So I've already transferred my chicken to a sheet pan here that I've lined with parchment paper, and now I'm just going to add in my potatoes and my carrots right next to it. Now I'm going to bake this in the oven at 400 for 20 minutes. In the meantime, in the same bowl, I'm going to add in my broccoli, my bell peppers, and my zucchini. Going to add in the rest of my seasonings, and I'm going to drizzle it with some more olive oil. It's now been 20 minutes. I took the pan out of the oven and now I'm just adding in the rest of my vegetables. Now, trying not to make too much of a mess, I'm just going to mix these all together. Now I'm just going to drizzle some of that sauce on top, and I'm also going to add another layer of the sauce on top of my chicken. I also decided to add some pepper, which I probably should have done earlier but completely forgot. Going to pop this back in the oven for another 20 to 25 minutes, and then that's it, we're done. Here it is out of the oven and it smelled amazing. Now make sure that your chicken reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees. Now you can do this by using a meat thermometer. This was so good. The chicken was moist and tender and the sauce was fantastic. I did warm up some of the extra sauce in the microwave for a few seconds to warm it up, and then added it on top of the chicken. This gave it even more flavor and it was delicious. This was healthy, it tasted really good, and it's such an easy meal to make. I'll definitely be making this one again. This last super simple chicken dinner is cranberry chicken. Now this was my least favorite out of all of these recipes, but Daniel really liked it, and we all have different tastes, so I'm still going to share it because you might really like it too. So again, this is extremely easy. You're going to grab a bowl and stir in 1 cup of French dressing, or you can also use Catalina, that works fine too. And you're going to mix this with 1 can of whole cranberry sauce, as well as 1 packet of dry onion soup mix, and about 1/2 of an orange zest. I'm going to mix this all together, and then I'm going to grab it and I'm going to add a little bit of the sauce on the bottom of a baking dish. I'm then going to place my chicken on top. I have 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and then I'm going to add the rest of my sauce on top of the chicken. I'm now going to bake this covered in a preheated oven at 375 degrees for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, you're going to take the cover off and put this back in the oven for another 15 minutes, or until it reaches at least an internal temperature of 165 degrees. That will let you know that it's safe to eat. Keep an eye on it because you don't want to overcook it. This is what it looks like. Like I said, this was not my favorite, but Daniel really liked it, and I served this with rice and with some green beans. So that is it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed making these delicious meals with me. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, please consider doing so by hitting that little red subscribe button down below. It's completely free. I would love to have you join me on this channel. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you're notified when I post a new video. Thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. And as always, I will see you again in my next video. Bye guys.